Not anymore.
Shoot. Well, I'll tell you when fun stuff pops up on there.
Okay, cool.
This would be interesting because I've never done an Instagram live before, and
Right.
I'm not gonna touch my phone because I'm afraid I'm gonna screw something up.
You're gonna mess something up, you think?
Yeah, I don't like. I'm afraid to try to move or reply to anything because I don't know what it will do. So we're just gonna
Right. Roll with
roll
it.
with this.
Cool.
Figure it out as we go.
Heck yeah, girl.
Yeah, you're getting a lot of love for the bangs, Kels.
Nice. Thanks, everybody. Little change. All
That's so
things new.
Yeah,
Aw.
all things new. Oh, this is so
Mhm.
fun. So this video the whole thing will capture and I'll be able to save it and we'll repost it later. Um, and I'll be interested to see if the comments and the questions and things capture also.
Yeah, that
We,
would be awesome. It
we
would be nice
shall
to go
see.
back.
Yeah. All right, Mama. Well, it's about 7:02 and we've got lots of people on. So let's get started if that feels okay to you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for everybody that's joining. I know that Kelsi's getting a ton of love and support, and it's been phenomenal to see all of the responses and everybody reposting about this Instagram live. And I know that feels really good to
Mm-hmm.
Kelsi and her fam. My name is Sarah Waters. Really, first and foremost, I'm just a friend of Kelsi's, and that's probably the most important part. This account is CuriosiFy. It's a podcast that I host. Kelsi was on it. I think you were my like second interview or
Mm-hmm.
third maybe.
Yeah, I think they're.
Uh-huh. And then we did a special in honor of Max a couple of weeks ago, specifically on suicide and some new ways to think about it and talk about it. So that's live on CuriosiFy, the podcast. You guys can all find that anywhere that you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast. But it felt good just to shed some light on that conversation a little bit. So,
Mm-hmm.
but that's who I am. I'm going to be taking questions from my end, you guys. So whoever's watching, if anybody just wants to chime in and ask questions, I'll let Kelsi know what those are and we'll try to get to as many as we can. But more so than anything, tonight, this is really about Kelsi sharing some of their story from the last number of years, mostly the last 9 or 10 months, specifically around Max's experience with benzodiazepine withdrawal symptoms, and all of the things that he was experiencing, kind of the first symptoms, what Kelsi witnessed on her end. It'll be good for anyone who's just curious about it. It'll be really, really good for anybody who struggles with similar symptoms or knows someone who is, because this is something that I mean, Kelsi, you didn't know, you guys were clueless when it first started
Mm-hmm.
happening.
Oh
And I'm
yeah.
a mental health clinician and I had never, the last like number of months, like the last year or so, it's really started to come onto the scene. There's
Right.
the opioid crisis, and then right on its heels was the benzodiazepine crisis.
Right.
So learning as we go, which is really tough. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad that everybody's online and just being willing to listen and educate themselves about it.
Yeah, me
Wish
too.
the circumstances were different, but I'm grateful that people's ears are open.
Me too.
Yeah. So, Kels, if you would give us a start of, tell us just briefly, like prior to benzo withdrawal, anything.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's important for people to recognize Max was just like really any of the rest of us.
Oh yeah. Oh
Can you
yeah.
take us way back and help us understand just quickly, like what kind of a dude Max was and how he showed up in the world?
Max was the best dude. He was the best dude ever. Full of life, just vibrant, so caring. You just love to be around him. Me and Max spent 13 years together, and I witnessed people from all walks of life, from all over the world, just be drawn to him. He just had something about him. It was his energy, his kindness, his sense of humor, his smile.
Oh,
He
that
he
smile,
was, I
just
know,
ear to ear.
it was the best. And he was just always looking out for people. Not only did he have my back as his girl, but he had 50 of my girlfriends' backs too. And they all just loved him for that and trusted him for that. He was a hard worker. He was ambitious. He owned his own company. He was a real estate appraiser for over 15 years. Had many hobbies, loved sports, loved playing basketball, golf, snowboarding, loved surfing, exercise, boot camps. He was just a guy on the go. He just got things done all the time. He got things done for himself, and then he was always just looking out for other people. Just a jack of many trades, if you will.
Loved people, loved the world, loved nature, music, laughing, showing up for people, helping, fully functional.
Fully functional, totally normal, like totally normal.
Yep. Career man, out in the world, social, all of the things.
Yeah. All of the things.
What was, can you shine a little bit of light? Max had some stuff early in life that was tough, as we all do. All of us have some levels of trauma in all gradients that can look all different ways. He was no exception, had some hard stuff early in life. Can you talk just a little bit about how that sort of started to manifest and show up and when that was?
Yeah, so Max lost his father when he was 6 years old. And he always would tell me that he always remembers just being a little anxious, throughout life, just in bigger gatherings or if caught off guard by somebody. And he said it really hit him, I believe it was his freshman or sophomore year in college, and he was in speech class and had to get up and give a speech, and that was the first time the walls kind of closed in for him. So prior to that, it was just your normal, I think we all kind of get a fluttery heart sometimes if, we're in a crowded room or we're meeting people for the first time. So it was very normal social anxiety, if you will, or just nervousness as a young kid, but never anything overwhelming or of concern until he had a panic attack in college his freshman year. So freshman or sophomore year, I don't quite remember. And that was like the traumatic moment where he went to his doctor and pretty much just said, this happened. What can you do for me? Like, what do I do for this? And that was when he was prescribed Xanax for those social anxiety moments.
So he was cruising along, having probably pretty relative stress in life, or pretty normal levels of stress. And as we all do, started to feel like worries, nervousness, and maybe some edges of anxiety. So he went to the doctor and said, what the heck is going on? I need some help. And the doctor said, here's a prescription.
Right. Take it as needed. And then what happened is Max took it one evening to help him just mellow out and go to sleep. And it worked really well. I don't know, I even took it every once in a while to help me sleep because it worked. And he got a hold of his doctor and said, hey, I realized that if I take this to help me sleep, it works really well. And she said, not a problem. You could take it every night to sleep. So Max never really, maybe a handful of times in the 13 years that I was with him, did he have to take Xanax for an anxiety situation. What he was using it for was to help him go to sleep at night as a sleeping pill.
Yep. Do you remember the dosage?
He was taking 0.5 milligrams of Xanax a night. So one little pill, he would break it in half, sometimes even just break it into a quarter and swallow that to go to bed.
Yep. I think one thing that I'm hoping that listeners or viewers really can take away is you'll hear in a moment, like Max was on Xanax and used Xanax in this way for a long, long time. But a lot of the stories we're hearing, this was a minimal dose. He was using it to sleep. And we're hearing a lot of stories from people who have similar symptoms that were on it for a lot shorter of time. So this isn't just because of the duration of time it was on. So anybody that's listening to this, like he was on a minimum dose and his system already started to kind of grow up and around the medicine, right? So then go on from there. So at the beginning it was for sleep, just at night, small dosage.
Yeah, no big deal. Just kind of a part of, it was like taking a vitamin. You know, he trusted. Never in a million years would we have thought that there was actually potential damage being done by ingesting something to help you go to sleep at night. So we never talked about it. We never even thought twice about it until there was a big old light shining into our situation after probably 2 years of searching for answers when he started to get sick.
Yep. So how long was he on Xanax?
He was on Xanax for about a decade, about 10 years, probably at least.
So
It could
10
have been.
years. And his prescribers were not saying, hey, man, like, I think it's time to titrate you off. Let's come up with some more organic solutions. They just kept filling the prescription.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, just quite simply, yeah.
Yep. And then he hit a point where, what was the transition? Because wasn't there some time at the end where it was moved to Klonopin?
Right.
Why did that happen?
So I was going over the timeline of everything earlier today because it's been such a blur. Max started feeling really ill in February of 2016. So he endured a lot of suffering for approximately 4 years. And it was in, let's see here, probably around March of 2017. So about a year after he started first, his system was off. He was not feeling like himself, and we couldn't find any answers.
Can you describe when you say not feeling like himself, what would that mean?
Yeah, well, it started with really intense stomach pain. His stomach just started really hurting. He went to gastrologists, naturopath, Western medicine doctors, everything under the sun, stool samples, like cameras, into his throat, like biopsies, just trying to get to the bottom of the stomach pain. And his anxiety was also beginning to increase because he wasn't feeling well. And everywhere he went, there was no answer. Every test came back normal. Blood work came back normal. Scans came back normal. Biopsies came back normal. So, of course, when you don't feel good and you're spending so much time and money trying to figure out what's going on with you, his anxiety began to rise. And that was, again, in 2017. So we had been together for 10 years at this point, and it was a noticeable change in just who he was, as far as his anxiety spiking. So that's when he went to a psychiatrist in Denver and just explained, like, my anxiety is becoming almost unbearable. And it was at that point that he went from Xanax to, I believe, 1.5 milligrams of Klonopin a day in March of 2017.
So before that, before you guys went to the psychiatrist, was the Xanax for all those years being prescribed by just a PCP?
Mm-hmm, it was.
Okay. So if viewers can listen to this for just a second, our PCPs, our primary care physicians, are educated very little on psychopharmaceuticals, just a little tiny bit.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime that your PCP prescribes you a psychopharmaceutical medication, SSRIs, SNRIs, antidepressants of any kind, anti-anxiety, immediately ask for a referral to a psychiatrist, because psychiatry physicians and clinicians actually specialize in that world. Mm-hmm. When a PCP doesn't understand, like, they're just writing a prescription and filling it for year after year after year after year, it's not ethical, mm-hmm. just to be totally blunt. Mm-hmm. So you guys sought out a psychiatrist, because of the symptoms that were coming up. They said, okay, time to stop the Xanax. We're going to give you something different. Was that because Max needed more to help with the anxiety?
Right. Yeah.
And Klonopin was a bit of a heavier hitter, for him.
Right. Right.
And then how long was he on? And that was Klonopin was used daily?
Yes. Yeah. Every day. Mm-hmm.
And if I remember, and I could be misquoting, so don't take my word for this, everybody else look it up, but I think that Klonopin is meant more for a very short-term use, like maybe 3 weeks. I could be misquoting that, but I'm pretty sure it's not meant for every single day for months and months and months. But as the consumers, we don't know this. So you had a psychiatrist writing the prescription. Here you go. This will help. Mm-hmm. And did the Klonopin, help?
No. No,
Really?
it really didn't. His anxiety was still out of control, and at this time, the only lead we really had on what was going on with his health was a naturopath suggested that he had a mold allergy. So this was around the summer of 2017. He's taking the Klonopin. He still feels terrible. And actually, the Klonopin made him feel worse. The side effects of that, he hated it. He hated the way that it made him feel, but he knew that if he came off of it, that could be trouble too. So yeah, he still felt terrible. And it was in the summer of 2017 where we kind of were just putting our hope in mold, thinking, okay, maybe he has a mold allergy. He's sick from this. So we moved out of our house for approximately from August until January of 2018. We weren't living in our house. We were bouncing around from house to house, running a mold test on every place where we were invited to stay or rented, to make sure that it was a safe environment for him. And just more stressful situations, and getting out of our home, out of our moldy home, into another home, he still was not feeling well. So there was all of this movement and putting our hope in different things, but nothing about his health or physical symptoms were changing. If anything, they were magnifying because of just the stress of it all, and still not having a solution or an answer.
And how old was Marley at that time? She must have been little.
She was little. I remember we celebrated her third birthday, kind of in the thick of all of the moving around. So really, Marley girl hasn't really had a stable, living situation since she was a baby.
Yeah, right. So Klonopin was on. How long did he end up being on the Klonopin?
He was on the Klonopin for 9 months.
And what was the decision? What happened around the decision to come off of the Klonopin, and how did he come off of it?
So the Klonopin wasn't helping. And it, like I said, it made him feel worse. He felt nauseous. He was getting like heat flashes, felt clammy, lethargic, tired. And he could trace back all of these new symptoms to the medication. So he just said, I have to get off of this. And I supported him 100%. So that was in December of 2018.
Yep. Okay.
And he contacted the psychiatrist that had prescribed the medication, said, hey, I want to come off of this. What do I do? And the doctor said, do a 4-week taper. So you're just going to cut your dose by a quarter, or in half, whatever that was, over the course of 4 weeks. So every week, cut it down another quarter. And after about 4, maybe 5 weeks, Max was completely off of the Klonopin.
Did they do a slow titration off of the Xanax when he was ramping up on the Klonopin, or did they just cold turkey
off the Xanax on the Klonopin, and then
for our viewers, one of the things we've been finding over the last year is we've all been kind of rallying around Kelsi and her family, and as they've been researching it, is this understanding that with benzo specifically, even a 4-week taper is like nowhere near enough time. We're talking to people who are micro tapering, where they're having to dissolve tiny, tiny, tiny little bits of the medicine in water and then take that 4 times a day, and you titrate like something like 1/100th of a milligram per day for a year and a half to 2 years to come off of these things safely so that your body doesn't short circuit and freak out. But that wasn't what was guided at all. It's not what I only know one prescribing psychiatrist that is in the know about that. I know that you've met some more and run into some more, but for the most part, I think that kind of the norm is, taper down, couple weeks, half pill, couple weeks after that, quarter pill, couple weeks after that, you're done. And now we know that that's way too fast, and it causes so much short circuiting. So he came off the Klonopin, and here you are rolling into, was it 2019 by this time yet? And
2019? No, it was 2018. I might have been a year ahead on some of those dates.
So he was on Klonopin. Yep.
So by February 2018, we moved back into our house. So it had finished getting all of the remodeling done. And at that point, he was off of the Klonopin, off of all anti-anxiety medication completely.
So what happened then in those upcoming weeks once he was titrated off the Klonopin?
Mm-hmm.
Then what? How did he
So
feel?
we moved home with high hopes that the mold was the problem, and that our home was now going to be a clean atmosphere for him, and that he would start to feel better, that we would see progress. But we went home and there was no progress. At this point, he started getting really crazy sinus pressure, like crazy pain throughout his sinuses, like pins and needles all throughout his nose, really bad, excruciating headaches. His stomach pain was coming back, and his anxiety continued to increase. By this time, I mean, him and I rarely, Max was a social butterfly when I met him. Like we did everything, and we could barely go out to dinner anymore at this point, or, go to a Rockies game. His anxiety was intense, and, yeah, sinus pressure, head pain. He became really sensitive to smell. And I couldn't burn candles anymore. We couldn't have fresh flowers in the house. Just crazy sensations all throughout here. He went to dentists. They suggested it could be root canal damage, and just searched high and low to try to figure it out. But it was extremely discouraging to go back home after all of that time away and all of that hope and money invested into mold, and for nothing to have changed.
Right. Yep. So when was the decision, and fill in the gaps if I'm skipping over something, but when you guys decided to hit the road in the RV and go to Mexico, am I missing some time there?
Well, so we moved home in February 2018.
Mm-hmm.
In March, he was peaking out of control. And it was in March when I said, you need to go somewhere and just breathe and just relax. So that was the first time he went down to Baja, Mexico. That was his first experience down there. He was out there for a week, and then I went and joined him and just saw that there was a little bit more of a relaxed attitude for him. And I thought, okay, maybe this is good. Maybe he needs a less stressful environment or a slower pace of life. Like maybe this can promote healing. Still just completely unaware of the monster that we were actually dealing with. And so that was in March. Oh man, we came home, just still the same thing. He was completely uncomfortable. We couldn't do a whole lot of anything. Went back down to Mexico the end of that year in December, and Max actually he got whacked in the head with his surfboard.
Right.
Rogue wave came, hit him, got him in the head, knocked him out cold. He was probably had a concussion, but not a major one. And when he went to the doctor in Mexico, he was really loopy and out of it, and I had to take our daughter back to our house. And they gave him a Valium, which is a benzo, while he was at the doctor. In his right mind, he never would have eaten that pill, but he did. And so that was the first time in close to a year, about 10 months, that he had ingested a benzo back into his system after it being out.
And that would have fired on the same, is it the GABA receptors?
Yeah.
It would have fired on the same receptors that the Xanax did, and that it makes me think, and I have no idea if this is actually accurate or not, but when I think of like a computer motherboard, if you were to like dump liquids on that, it would start to short circuit and it would not function the same. And then when you went to try to use it again or it would fritz. And in that, I can imagine after a year of being off of it, and then all of a sudden you dump more stuff into those same exact receptors that were already fried.
Right.
So what happened with that when he took that Valium, you said it was?
Yeah, it was a Valium. And as soon as he kind of came to later on that day, oh man, he was pretty freaked out about the fact that he had done that, because he knew that he could potentially go through a process that I think it's called kindling, where you introduce it back into your system and it all, like you just explained, it all just fires way more intensely. So I remember getting home around the holiday, and his anxiety was just through the roof. And all we knew at that point was we have to get back down to Mexico, because there was just a piece to the lifestyle that at least brought just a little bit of comfort into our situation.
Yep.
So regardless of how he felt, Max, like I said, he just got things done. And we loaded up the RV, and 6 weeks after returning home, we were on the road heading back down to Mexico. So benzos, it's called waves and windows. And what I've learned is you can start to seem a little bit better, and you can start to feel a little bit better. And at any time, like, you can just get smacked again with just the most horrific symptoms, sometimes even worse than what you've experienced before, sometimes totally different symptoms. There's over 100 different symptoms that people have reached out to me with. One sweet girl from the UK had like 75 that she's trying to deal with and get help for. So I think that there was just a grace window for us when we hit the road. It was just heaven sent time, those 5 months that we got to spend down in Mexico together, because I saw a change in him. And I think it was just a window. It was a window where he started to feel a little bit better. And there was hope there. He never felt great. There was never a day where he was good. Every day he was battling either the face pain, or, you know, his stomach wasn't feeling good, or he was feeling a little anxious. But there was joy, and there was the promotion of a really healthy lifestyle, like meditation and eating well and surfing and stillness. And I just thought that we'd found the ticket to get my man healed. And it just felt really promising when we were down there.
Was this about the timing that you took the reins on the cooking and you were like, we are cleaning this shit out? Like, you really revamped the way you guys ate, or maybe not totally revamped it, but you cleaned it out.
Oh yeah.
Was that about that same time?
That was probably about a year before, when his stomach was really crazy. And Max was the one that really took the lead on our diet. He educated me crazy. So by the time we were in Mexico, we had already adapted a new eating lifestyle, and we were just way more conscious and aware of what we were putting into our bodies.
Yeah.
So that was just, that continued.
Yeah, and these are a lot of the pictures that are floating around with Max and his surfboard, just that big smile. This is the time period, right?
Yeah, it felt so good, because that was a 5-month window where I just saw him. I saw his spirit, and it infused a lot of hope into me that we were on the right track.
Yep. Okay, so then it starts to get real hard.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So in July of last summer, 2019, it's when we hit the road to come back home from Mexico. And it's hard to say really what did what, and, you know, this and that, but Max had to take an antibiotic at that point because he got a parasite in Mexico, and it was called Flagyl. And from the moment he took it, he didn't like the way that he felt. And what we came to find out is that it's a really intense antibiotic. Like, it makes most people feel pretty crummy. So he had called a friend, got a doctor friend of his, got his opinion. He said, keep taking it. You know, you have to stay on it. It makes everyone feel pretty crappy. But the difference is Max's body was going through an intense season of healing. And our gut-brain connection is nothing. I mean, we've got to pay attention to it, because what we put into our gut impacts our brain. And this pill, essentially, this antibiotic, wipes out all of the bad bacteria and the good bacteria inside of your stomach. But when you go through benzo withdrawal, you're running on very few bacteria in your stomach. Like, your body is working overdrive to try to repopulate all of that bacteria. So what we believe is that Flagyl just kind of wiped him clean. And from the drive home, I just remember looking at him and I was like, are you okay? And he was not okay. So we got home back to Colorado in like mid July. And by the third night that we were home, we were calling 911 because he had a panic attack and couldn't breathe. And he was convinced in that moment that he was dying.
Mm.
So that was the first of probably, I don't know, half a dozen 911 calls because he thought that he was dying. And that was a new thing. Like, Max did not have panic attacks. I have, like I said, I'd been with him for 12 years at this point, and I'd never seen him have a single panic attack. And then I was watching him have them almost every other day, and having to talk him down and just be with him in that.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to the point we knew that paramedics, couldn't do anything. We knew that he was just what was happening,
Yeah.
but it didn't take the intensity and the trauma and the fear away from his experience. And that was happening all the time.
Yeah.
In addition to that, he said that it felt like there was a clamp on his brain. He just was like, there's like a clamp, like a vice is how he would describe it, that somebody was just tightening a vice on his brain. And then he said that he felt like his brain was plugged into a car battery, and that there was just electricity flowing from his, like the lower part of his brain, like just throughout his whole body. And it was causing insomnia. The crazy stomach pain was back at this point. He lost 30 pounds between July and about October. So in about 3 months, he lost 30 pounds because his stomach was just shredded. And again, we went to a gastrologist. They did is it called an endoscopy, where they go in, take a look around, and everything was normal. Come to find out, benzo belly is a thing, and it's part of the healing and part of the waves that people get hit with.
Did you know yet that it was benzos, or were you starting to be suspicious? Has anybody started talking about this at that point? Like October-ish of last year?
Yeah, Max, for about a year at this point, knew that the pills like messed him up. Yeah. I don't think that he understood how bad they messed him up until it got really bad for him last summer. And then he was glued to his phone. Max was a smart guy. He was a smart guy. And he, there is a point where you can read too much, research too much, and maybe he did that a little bit. But I think what happened is he came across all of the information that he needed to be the only one to be able to diagnose himself. Nobody could tell him what was going on. But he, this last summer, just knew that he was going through benzo withdrawal syndrome.
Yep.
And he became just really involved with the Benzo Buddies website, just trying to get encouraged, find hope from other people walking through it that would just say, just hang on, it's going to be okay. For me, I invested my time in other places. Like, I didn't jump on the Google train with him trying to figure out what was going on, because that wouldn't have served our family well at that time. I was more diving into my spirituality just to keep us afloat in the realm of love, and knowing how to be there for him on a compassionate level and a loving level, and to just make sure that I didn't start drowning in my own fear over what I was witnessing my husband go through. So it wasn't until October where I finally, I just prayed and I needed direction. And then all of these things started being brought to my attention. That CNN special aired that month. A girlfriend sent me a Westward article about benzos. And you, Sarah, shared the book Own Yourself by Kelly Brogan with me. And I had begun reading that book, and she just really broke down what benzodiazepines can do to you long term. So,
and Kelly Brogan, if I remember right, she was a prescribing psychiatrist, I believe.
Yep.
And she had enough of it all, and all the information that was put down and under researched and pushed under the rug. So she said, screw it. And she went into the functional medicine side of things and started to surface and talk about, hey, you guys, there's not research, or there's not enough, or if there is, it's shoved under the rug. And she put that into the public eye in a big way.
She did. I think she described benzos specifically as grossly understudied drugs.
Yep.
That we just did not know really anything about the long-term effects of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then you guys went to, I remember Arizona was the first treatment facility. You guys tried every kind of treatment possible.
Yeah, we did.
Every kind. And when was Arizona, the place there?
Arizona was the beginning, or maybe around like mid-October.
Yep.
We found a holistic treatment center, 45 days or so. And it just sounded great, you know, organic food, meditation, just everything to kind of tackle mind-body healing. And
they were trauma informed. They used neurology. They looked at the QEEG scans of the brain for the electrical funkiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had high hopes for that one.
We did. And it was a package deal. And we liked that it was not a medication prescribing facility. Max did not want to get back on pills. He did not want to go that route at all. So it seemed like a good fit, but his stomach was out of control at that point too. And he got there and his pain was so intense at that point that he couldn't even sleep. They had to take him to the emergency room 2 different times because his stomach was he was being tortured. And then he had insomnia because the pain was so great. So they were not a medical facility, and they pretty much said, you know, you've got to go and figure out physically what's going on with you, and then there's a space for you here, but we can't offer you the help that you need. Like, it's just kind of beyond us at this point.
Yeah. And he at that point was already having some suicidal thoughts too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, some darker thoughts had started to make their way into his mind. None that he really expressed a whole lot. It wasn't until December where the intrusive thoughts really started to take root. And that was when he checked himself into a mental health facility in California. Yep. So he thought, okay, things were just out of control at this point. His anxiety, his insomnia, his pain, his panic. And he thought, I need higher level of care. And if I have to get back on a different kind of medication to help bring me down so I can deal, fine. He was desperate. We were desperate to find him relief. At this point, it had been from mid-July until mid-December of just walking through the fire. It was every single day. He couldn't leave his mom's house. He couldn't work out anymore. It got to the point where heat, temperature was making him feel sick, being outside or in the sunshine. Everything that brought him any ounce of joy was just being removed from the equation. Yeah. And, oh God, it sucked. So he went out to California in hopes that, okay, maybe they can balance me out and maybe we can get a grip on this. And December is when I actually started reading other stories of people going through benzo withdrawal syndrome. And that was the first time I'm like, oh shit. Yeah. This is really, really bad.
Yeah. And you hear all the stories.
Oh, and it was just what I was reading is exactly what I was witnessing Max go through. So it was there was clarity there. And there was nothing to deny. It was completely obvious to me what we were dealing with at this point. And I refused to become afraid, but I did have a feeling that this could end very badly. Just reading the stories and connecting the dots. And that was when he called me, and he pretty much was like, get me out of here. They just want to give me pills. It's making me feel horrible. And that's when the intrusive thoughts became crazy town. And I flew out to California and got in a car, and we actually drove home because his anxiety was too intense to even go to the airport. I remember the day I picked him up, like, He was just so thankful to be out of there. I
What
think he just wanted to be with the people he loved.
Yeah.
You
What a
know?
scary situation to like be looking all over the country, all over the world, different specialists, and then to figure out what you're dealing with and to know like nobody knows what to do with this.
It's pretty much hang on. Hang on, and eventually it will stop, it will subside, you'll get another window, but you don't know how long those windows are going to be. You don't know how bad it's going to hit you the next time. When I finally landed on my acceptance of what we were dealing with, it was just like a whole new world was opened up to me, and it was just like, oh my God, there's nothing that you can do. There's nothing you can do but do the best you can. And we moved in with my sister and her family up here in Loveland because our home in Denver was being rented. And after he came home from that and had put more medication into his system for the first time in really 2 years, aside from that Valium slip up, he came home from that, and like we entered into a whole new hell that I did not even, you can't even, it can't be described. He had like crazy insomnia. I think he went like 6 days without sleeping. Mm-hmm. And he would just, he had restless leg syndrome, and he would just pace, and he would just walk around the house. And he also had these crazy like body convulsions where he would just like, just, like his whole body would just jerk uncontrollably. If he was laying down, it was like a full body spasm and a yell, and he couldn't control it. And he would just look at me like in tears, and he would just say, I hate this. Like, what is happening? And I'm like, I don't know what's happening. We went to the emergency room like 4 different times, just trying to find someone who could take something away. He said he felt at this time too like his whole body was dipped in acid, and he was burning from head to toe. He would lay in a cool bath, like all the way just as high as he could get in the water, just to try to stop his body from burning. And he couldn't even shower because the sensation of the shower hitting him like hurt the burning feeling. And when he wasn't sleeping, it would just make him feel really crazy. And the intrusive thoughts came in a whole new form at this point. And the suicidal ideation that was a new one, where you don't ever, that's a conversation you don't ever want to have with someone you love. And my heart goes out to anyone who's, being there for somebody in that situation. Because you're just kind of forced to like live that death with them over and over again. And all he wanted was for the pain to stop. And nothing was making the pain stop.
It shines a really important light. That CuriosiFy little mini podcast I did about suicide, it really does shine light on the fact that people don't want to die, but they can't do this anymore.
And he would say that to me all the time. He's like, I don't want to die. He's like, I want to live. I want to overcome this. I found in his journal like just affirmations where he wrote every single line for 2 pages, like, this is not the end. 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 It was like the thoughts were so powerful that he was trying to just take control over them by tangibly writing out a different story, or I will not die from this. I will not die from this. And I actually just found those pages a few days ago, cleaning stuff out, but I just, he did not want to die. He wanted to live.
Mm-hmm. And when we hear this story of all of the days that it was happening, for all of the years, all of the seeking you guys did, all of the professionals, Western medicine, functional medicine, Eastern medicine, meditation,
Acupuncture,
neurologists,
yeah.
everything you guys tried, and it was dead ends everywhere. When's the first time a clinician actually said, I think you're right about this? Did,
Um,
did any of the like Western medicine people?
no, I mean, there were times in the emergency room where doctors looked at him and they're like, benzo withdrawal syndrome, like those are out of your system in 2 weeks. And he's like, I'm not like, they just didn't get it. And they looked at him like, okay, you know, just the lack of compassion, the lack of knowledge, understanding. It made my stomach turn. It pissed me off,
Yeah.
actually. And I just wanted to be like, can you listen to him? Like he knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's feeling. And this is more than just the pill being out of your system. There's damage done here. Like, what can we do about it? Or to at least subside the pain just a little bit so the guy can function, you know? Like,
And they had nothing.
no, they didn't have anything.
It
Ever.
reminds me, and you and I have talked about this before, but it reminds me of, I remember in the 80s when HIV was really first starting to come on the scene and we didn't understand it. Nobody knew how it was being spread or why it was in certain communities. And so many people died. And they were the front lines. Their lives were the sacrifices of that disease, of that thing. And it took so many lives being lost for then the medical community to be like, okay, this is the thing, we need to figure it out. I have no doubt that this benzo withdrawal thing will be researched and will be studied.
Yeah.
And I am so sad and I am so sorry that Max was the sacrifice and on the front lines of that. And this is part of why we're all speaking up so much on this, is we cannot be quiet about this. These medical professionals weren't even educated, and this stuff's never even been researched. There's a lot of research on here's what it does, and like you said, the benzos, they work. They do. You feel different. I've used them before, and they do help you sleep. They do calm you down quickly.
Right.
And that's such a breath of fresh air. But it's the quick fix.
Right.
And the Western medicine community especially is all about tending to the symptoms versus digging for the roots of what's the origin, what's the genesis, why are these symptoms existing in the first place?
Right.
And let's uproot them.
Totally.
Oh, Kels.
It sucks. It sucks so bad. I miss him so much, but he just didn't know how to do it anymore. And like after, like, you know, there were even moments where he would wake me up and be on the floor, just like kicking, like, just make it stop, make it stop. And all I could do was be there with him, you know, and just be there with him and just try to calm him down a little bit. But after what I saw, I understand why he did it.
Yeah, right.
I do. And I mean, up until the moment that the news was delivered, I was sure that we would get through this, you know, and I think that hope was a really good thing for me. I needed it, and Marley needed it, and Max needed it. But the moment that I heard the words, you know, I'm sorry, but Max is dead, like, it was just like this veil was lifted off of my eyes, and I could go back and see him and hear him differently. And I can go back and I wish I could look at him and say, you know what, Max, I believe you. I believe everything that you ever said.
Yeah.
I believe you. Because it was hell, and he was very educated on it. I think that Max knew that he might have just been on him a little too long, and that the damage was really great, and that maybe he wasn't going to be able to come out of this.
And we don't know. There's not enough research yet. There are hopeful stories. We've talked to so many people at this point that say it took a long time, but over time it did start to relax and they found some relief. But there are also a lot of stories that have ended like Max's did too.
Right.
Way too many. We've had emails coming just out of the woodworks and messages from people saying, my dad, the same thing, my brother, my cousin, my mom, myself, like same symptoms, same ending their lives. Like this is that CNN special was a big eye opener, and I'm sure our viewers will hear more on this. But the CNN did it. Lisa Ling has a number of seasons, I believe, of a show called This Is Life, and she just looks at controversial topics and different people's lives and things they're going through. One of which was one episode titled "The Benzo Crisis," and we put that video up, and when the first 5 or 10 minutes of that episode, the people that they were showing while they were symptomatic, I remember you saying, like, that's Max, like that's him. And not, most of us never saw him in those moments because you guys were secluded and holding space for that. So I think a lot of us, when we saw that special, were like, oh my gosh. It's one thing to hear it, it's a whole nother thing to see it. And for those of you watching that are curious about the CNN special, the Lisa Ling episode, it was posted, what'd you say, in October, right?
Right.
And from between October and a little less than 4 weeks ago, when less than 4 weeks ago, when we posted the GoFundMe and included that link, that episode had about 9,000 views. Within the first 2.5 weeks of us pushing that thing out, it doubled in views. And who knows if Max's story is the thing that doubled that thing's views. We don't know. But possibly. Regardless, though, lots and lots and lots of people watched that episode in those 2.5 weeks. And what was it, a week ago, that somebody notified us YouTube took it off. You can't find it's the only episode of that, all of those seasons. It's the one episode that's off. So it's easy to make assumptions. We don't know. We're trying to contact YouTube and CNN and all these people and ask who took it down and why. But it is interesting, right? It makes us ask a lot of questions about why did that come down and why just that episode. Timing is kind of funny. What would you like to share with anyone who's watching right now, specifically on the craving to run to a pill for anything?
Right. To just slow down. I hope that this COVID crisis has maybe set a new pace in people to just slow down. I think that the society that we're in is, I don't feel right, give me something, make it go away so I can get back to doing my biz. But our bodies are so intelligent and they are so beautifully designed. And when anxiety, for instance, it is uncomfortable. Nobody likes to feel anxious. It's there to tell you, your body is telling you something's wrong. Something needs your attention. And that's where going and getting to the root of why your body is feeling this way is really important, versus going to a doctor right away, right out of the gates, taking a pill to just suppress that feeling. It doesn't go away. You're just pushing it down. You're just ignoring the root. And I think if we can just get better as a whole at not being ashamed of what we're feeling, not being ashamed of what we're thinking, then we can speak up a little bit about it and say, hey, I'm not feeling right, or I'm going through this or going through that. And just reaching out, like just having two safe people that you can talk to when the walls are closing in. Like, find those people. It can be friends, it can be, therapists, it can be coaches, it can be church members, whoever, but just talk to each other. Like, we're all in this human experience trying to figure this out. And there's no shame in mental ill health. There's no shame in anxiety. There's no shame in depression. It's just part of being human. It's part of being alive. And if we push those down because they don't feel good, then we're never going to experience what's on the other side of that, which is profound freedom. You know?
For our viewers, there's a really good book by Bessel van der Kolk called The Body Keeps the Score. And it is such a great picture of how the body is so wise, and it will always tell us when something is off, not just with biological sickness or offness, but with psychological stuff or social stuff, your body will always tell you. We're so used to being in our heads. And Kelsey, you and I have talked relentlessly about thoughts and how they can be so deceiving. Will
Right.
you talk just for a second? Because you just said the word, and I know that Max, Max had some strong, if he was sitting here right now, he'd have some strong things to tell us about shame. Ooh, and I want to point out, actually, my Instagram is telling us that I have 1 minute and 50 seconds left. So maybe we save shame for a different one.
Yeah, that's
Would
good.
that feel okay?
It would, because I think that's a big, important topic too.
Yeah, I do too. And I don't want to miss that. Resources. Can you spit a few of them out? The Ashton Manual.
The Ashton Manual, Google it. It is a woman from the UK, a doctor, who actually paid attention to what this could be. And she provided a lot of information and a lot of research on tapering off of this medication in a very safe way. So if you are on them and you want or are curious about coming off, look up, Google the Ashton Manual, and then take it to your primary care physician. Have them look at it and get their opinion and have them walk with you through that. Maybe you're going to be educating them too.
Yep.
And there's also benzobuddies.org, I believe. And that's just a community of people who are walking through this fire. Sometimes we need an ear of someone who understands.
Yep. Yep. So
those
Ashton
are-
Manual, Benzo Buddies. July 11th is World Benzodiazepine Awareness Day. Also, if you guys want to follow and get more information from Kelsi, his Instagram account is Remembering Max.
Remembering Max. Yeah.
On Instagram. And then Remembering Max, or Remember Max Kraus at gmail.com. You can email if you'd like to be put on an email blast with more updates. Kels, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
I love you.
This is important, and I'm thankful for you. I love you too. I love everybody. Thank you for being with us.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.